the dangers out there are very real. Yusuf and I have spoken to many groups of parents about just what is out there. But I would say, even in the time that we have been campaigning on this issue, things have become significantly worse. And I would say the turning point was 2013 with the passing of the same-sex marriage bill. And that had really, we anticipated that things would nosedive after that, particularly as far as schools were concerned. We predicted at the time that the first place that this dreadful law would impact would be in our children's classrooms. And that is exactly what has happened. So we now have homosexual rights groups like Stonewall. Just the doors of schools are wide open to them now. You know, let us come in, we can talk about you know, same-sex relationships now that marriage is the definition of marriage has changed. There are other groups. There's a whole little industry growing up of organisations going into schools on the gender issue, children choosing their own gender, and all that area. So all of this is penetrating schools at an alarming rate. In addition to responding to the consultation, I would encourage anybody who's got children at school to start engaging now with the child's school. You know, finding out exactly what is being taught in your child's school. And you know, it's every parent's right, and it's their duty, in fact, to find out what is being taught to their children. And this can be done in a very friendly, polite way, but to find out, you know, what is being taught. You know, is sex education on the curriculum? If yes, what is being taught there? Are they covering relationships education? What sort of relationships are they covering? What sort of books, particularly in primary schools, what sort of storybooks have they got available to the children? Because particularly in primary school level, this is all being promoted in a very, very subtle way. Lovely, colourful, very well produced storybooks about you know, a king and a king falling in love. Two male penguins hatching an egg, and mummy makes three, you know, two mummies bringing up a little boy, or, you know, a whole range of these storybooks. And this is impacting on our children, and the aim is to just normalise and naturalise the idea of same-sex relationships, so that children grow up thinking there's absolutely no difference between a man and a man, a woman and a woman, and a man and a woman. They just think it's completely normal, because they've had this drip-fed to them through their primary school life. And one of the worst things is the children have no critical faculties. They've got no way of challenging this. But what's even worse is neither do their parents. A lot of parents really can't see that there's anything wrong with this. They just think, oh, that's nice. They're not looking 10 years, 20 years down the line when their children can get caught up in what are dangerous and harmful lifestyle choices. And, you know, homosexual behaviour is disordered and extremely dangerous, physically and mentally. So setting aside any spiritual concerns, we should be concerned about our children's mental and physical health. So I think now is the time to start making inquiries about what is actually happening in your child's school. One of the questions in the consultation is actually about how should schools consult with parents on this issue. So that's a very important question to respond to. And we're suggesting precisely these sort of issues, that schools should be transparent about what they're teaching children. There should be full disclosure to parents about what is being taught to children. And parents should make it clear to the school that they would be unhappy if their child was being taught about same-sex relationships, because that is not part of how they want to teach their children. And indeed, the critical point to make is that when a child needs to be taught about this issue or needs to hear about this issue, it should be the parent who's telling them. It's not that we want to deny that these things are taking place. It's not that we want to, put our children in a box and that they're not part of the real world. Our children have got to live in the world. They've got to hold their own. They've got to be strong against this tide that's breaking over society. And the way that they'll be strong is if we as parents are teaching them and telling them about these issues. I always think of it, I want the compass of my children's lives to be pointing to me, my husband. I do not want them to be educated on the internet and on Facebook and on social media. And the less we engage with our children and get in the driving seat of our children's lives, the more the internet's going to dominate their lives. And I've had very, very heated discussions, radio debates, about precisely this topic, with people saying, oh, well, it's very difficult to control these things, and, sometimes children have 2 mobile phones, and this is the world we live in. No, hang on a minute. What happened to the parent taking the mobile phone? What happened to internet blocks? What happened to actually just switching the internet off? What happened to discipline? It's not rocket science. If your child is on their phone constantly, if your child is on the internet and looking at pornography, you take them away. And just, I'm not going to talk for too much longer, but when I do these interviews, it comes to me very, very strongly just how much parents are being pushed out of the picture. All these programs are not, and all these proposals are not taking parents into account at all. Who is best placed to protect a child from digital sexual dangers? It's parents. It's parents, because children are not when they're at school, they're not, for the most part, on social media. That happens when they're out of school. That happens when they're at home. And school lessons about the dangers of the internet are no substitute for the ongoing, loving vigilance of parents. The state cannot be a parent. And when the state tries to be a parent, the children will suffer. Children do suffer. We're just betraying our children if we don't look after them properly and just leave them to school and to the internet. So I think we'll take some questions now, probably. As I say, I do apologise. We didn't quite get this ready in time, but anyone who wants to leave their email address, we can email it, or you can get in touch with Yusuf, and you can look at our website. Yeah.
So just before we take the questions, just thank you, Antonia, for your detailed explanation, and really it was quite something that eye-opener for us, and many things that we were unaware of before. But before we go into the open session of the question and answer, Saghir Hussain has something also to share with us, which is also going to shock you.
I wasn't actually scheduled to speak, but Sheikh Sal wanted me to say a few words, and I do have a little legal background, so it may or may not assist here. What really triggered me into is what you said about the state getting involved in the private lives of individual citizens and families. And this, what we're saying is, I think this is quite relevant when you consider making your points for the consultation. There's always been a heavy debate between how much a state should interfere in the life of a citizen. You know the old saying, the Englishman's home is his castle. If you extend that, it's really saying, look, we don't want the police, we don't want local authorities, we don't want governments to be interfering with our lives. Take our taxes every month, fine, that's our contract with you, and make sure you spend it wisely, but don't keep around knocking on our doors telling us how to lead our lives. Unfortunately, the Muslim community just happens to be an expert in this field because we've been subject to what that same government is now doing to a wider society, which is to try to socially engineer our lives in a certain way that it wants. In the old days, they used to call it communism and socialism, and the Soviet Union was well known for that, where if you didn't agree with the party line, there was something wrong with you. You were either sent to a gulag or you were sent to a psychiatric ward for treatment because you clearly, if you don't agree with the party line, there's something wrong with you. And unfortunately, what we've seen over the last 10, 15 years, particularly with a policy called Prevent, is that that is a prime example of the state aggressively trying to socially re-engineer its citizens. And the pretense has been that of these Muslims and other foreigners who are here, we've got these very, very bad cultural practices that need to be sorted out. And unfortunately, I think mainstream society has been quite distracted. And I think other factors like fear and prejudice, Islamophobia, have played a large part in distracting other parts of society to thinking what template is being established by these government policies. And I think it's that same kind of mindset, a same kind of aggression, also known as muscular liberalism, that's really now being pushed into wider elements of society. And I keep an eye particularly on certain kind of ideologues we call neoconservatives, people from Andrew Jackson Society, people from Policy Exchange, the names would be William Shawcross, Michael Gove, a few other people like that. And if you watch their politics, it's actually structured towards a very secular, fundamentalist type of citizen that needs to be done. And I think this is the context in which this SRE is now being pushed as well, apart from many other things that we know about as a Muslim community. And I think the other point I want you to bear in mind is that Prevent may well become relevant when you make these representations to your school teachers and your headmasters, because they are being trained to any Muslims who makes these sort of comments to report you to Prevent. So if that happens, please let us know. And I'm pretty sure that the senior politicians who you know are quite interested in this debate would be very annoyed if they found out that the Prevent, suddenly local police officers intervening because you made a representation or expressed an opinion about your religion. And don't leave that at local level, this is a very senior level. I'm sure Antonio and Yusuf will know exactly where to take those complaints up to. Somebody at school suddenly said, you know what, you've got to meet a social worker for Prevent, because you as a Muslim expressed a very strong opinion against what is being told by the government. You still have a right, and if a teacher doesn't let you do that, they are in the wrong, not you. So make sure, please, that you express your opinions, as Yusuf and Antonio said, and remember that this is a much wider context, which is the whole thing about to secularize public space and public office. And this is the battle that's been going on in the West for centuries, many of you will know about that. But in particular, it's been very, very hostile over the last 20, 30 years. And as the Muslim community particularly knows, we've been at the forefront of that experimentation, which is now being widened. And I'm just saying, look, please don't be afraid, don't be fearful. We can deal with these people. You have experts who know all the ins and outs, deal with them. And you have lawyers who will tell you free many times, who will say, you know what, if somebody gives you problems, you tell us, we'll deal with it.
Jazakallah khairan to expert legal advisor Saghir Hussain. So anybody has problems with the Prevent, please get in touch with him now. Yes, indeed. I want to, before we just take the question right now, Brother Wahid Aziz, we had our meeting here previously. That was the first meeting, and that is what MEND as an organization. So I think it's very useful if MEND briefly can just tell us, as Wahid now is now the representative for South London, to tell us what MEND is doing as an organization to create awareness on this issue, even though we had our first meeting here last week.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. MEND as an organisation campaigns on Islamophobia and the issues of Islamophobia in particular, but we had a meeting last week to discuss this particular issue as well. And coming on from that, we had this first wider consultation. But MEND will be making a submission, and we will encourage everyone to actually make submissions based on information that you received today. But if people would like to come and join the MEND team, we have a meeting here every first Thursday of every month. Just one very quick thing to add to what Brother Samir mentioned earlier on regarding PREVENT. If you do have an issue with PREVENT, there is the PREVENT Watch hotline, and there is also the MEND's own Islamophobia response unit. It's staffed by professionals, and if you've got any issue, whether it's PREVENT or anything else that you come across, you can actually call